Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Facebook members. It's a beautiful Wednesday, June summer afternoon, evening for most. Welcome. We have two guests today. Our normal guest, Louise Dunaway, is here to talk about her book, but we also have a special guest, Kelly. And Kelly will be introducing himself soon. Kelly is a Qigong master. One of the things that quite a few people ask on, um, most of the members ask about developing a presence practice, or how do I develop a presence practice? And most of presence practice involves inhabiting the body. So what Eckhart says is the way we anchor our thoughts is through breath work or anchor it into the body. And one of the ways that his partner Kim Ing uses to anchor presence is Qigong and yoga. So Kelly's going to talk about Qigong. So I'll give you the floor, Kelly, if you want to talk about what is Qigong and how does it help and how has it helped you with your presence practice? And then maybe Louise has questions for you about Qigong. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you. It's a pleasure to be here today. It's wonderful to see you all. Qigong, wow, there's a very big topic. I have been practicing Qigong training for a little over 30 years now. I've very strange, sort of very curious, unique perspective on life. As a kid growing up with asthma that almost killed me numerous times as a kid. So I wanted to learn how to make my body strong and how to be safe, plain and simple, and deal with my asthma. And one of the things that happened is I happened to watch a movie about the Japanese samurai and how one of these samurai had healed himself as a kid with meditation and physical training. And I went, how do I do that? I want that. Yeah, I want to, be strong. So I did my research, and my parents were very supportive. I was about 12, and I found a workshop that was happening in the spring, and they sort of went, well, as long as it's your own money. And I went, okay, how much snow shoveling is that? And it happened to be in this little church where my dad recognized the name of the person who was hosting it. So he drove me to the church, and this person opens up the door, and it turns out to be someone he taught school to 20 years previously. So he's like, you'll be fine. I'll pick you up at 5. And I went to workshops and trained for about 4 years with this group. And a year and a half after learning my first set of Qigong that stuck, called the 8 Pieces of Brocade, my asthma was all gone. My bronchitis was all gone. I was healthier than I ever thought I possibly could be. And none of my allergies, my asthma has never come back. I have not been sick with a cold since. It's really remarkable. That whole process as a young kid, finally actually having an experience like that, that was so empowering, that showed me how my relationship with my body could be so different, how I could actually build a connection with my body that was that strong, that gave me tools to understand how to be strong and be present in my body, how to feel everything in my body, and how to give myself a safe space to process through anything that was coming up. And that's pretty much what my Qigong practice has been the last 30 odd years. After my asthma went away, I was just like, wow, like, okay, this is, I was only doing this 2 or 3 times a week. What happens if I do it every day, or like 2 or 3 times a day? And so I really started exploring the combinations and the effects, and any opportunity to, go to a workshop or buy a book, or, God bless the internet when YouTube happened and people started actually posting stuff. and there's information of other systems and other practitioners out there. I mean, I spent years and decades really researching as much as possible and experiencing as much as possible to give myself a nice rounded understanding of what I was doing, how it was affecting my body, the mental training, the emotional awareness that came with a lot of the stuff that I did, the meditation. I mean, my background also went from the Qigong into the martial arts. I've been very physically wired my entire life. And I love the idea of, you know, the whole samurai code of ethics and being a protector. So like as a young guy, it was like really, you know, yeah, this makes a lot of sense. And of course that led into the Buddhism and the traditions of the East and the mindfulness practices. And, you know, I found some pieces that made sense with things that I'd experienced doing Qigong and my sitting meditation. And I just dug deeper and deeper. I've also, yeah, I've been doing the martial arts and specifically the Chinese, what are called internal martial arts like Tai Chi and Bagua and Xingyi for pretty much the last 30 years as well. And those are arts that are built on Qigong concepts of opening the body, relaxing the body so that your mind and body are connected and unified as a single unit. And that's probably the biggest key that I have experienced in terms of my own personal journey of waking up to this space of being able to be present in my body, be safe in my body, be safe feeling what I was feeling, even if I was triggered, and understanding how to breathe through everything. I mean, with asthma especially, the biggest thing is not having control of your breath. And it was a profound revelation to wake up one day and realize that I hadn't been sick, I hadn't had an asthma attack or any bronchitis or any allergy attacks for 6 or 8 months. I would kind of walked around in a daze, just sort of like feeling the shift in my perception of myself, and was like, wow, okay, so this is for real. This is, you know, actually understanding that I was physically experiencing a shift in perception of myself really opened a lot of doors in terms of looking at things, not as just, you know, reading the book, but how important the actual physical practice was. What else? Gosh, I've studied primarily Chinese arts last 25, 30 years. I've spent a lot of time learning Tai Chi. I did a lot of full contact karate at the beginning because that was what was accessible here, which was another education in terms of the fear of, you know, violence and how my anxiety about, you know, getting hurt was a real challenge to face. And, you know, even though you know, we're doing this with friends and stuff like that, as a martial artist, it's still, you know, it's one of those learning experiences of understanding what the mind does, you know, how my monkey mind would want to like run away and create all these situations, these potential situations to be afraid of, and not understand that I could step back and observe the situation. That happened along the way to deepen, you know, because I go back to my Qigong and I'd be fine. I go back to that space that I knew from when I was a teenager, and I'd be like, okay, why can't I not have this when I'm sparring? Why can I not do this when I'm in my karate class? What's going on? So there are a lot of steps along the way of waking up to how to hold that space and how to stay strong in that space while I'm doing other things, while I'm doing karate, while I'm sparring, while I'm in the office, going through email, while I'm dealing with people on the phone. There's always ways that you know, your monkey mind likes to try and hook you or hijack the experience to loop you back into fear and anxiety. And that's, you know, from my experience, I view it as a constant process, a constant refinement. This is why I love teaching what I do, is because it parallels, you know, the physical disciplines parallel for me, and what I've found and experienced, that parallels the mental discipline you have to have, and the process as well, where, you know, it's not up and down. I mean, or it's not a straight line. It's always an up and down. It's always different every day. Everything is always different, but you can build that core space of pulling yourself back into being present and being safe in your body.
Thank you, Kelly.
You're welcome.
Louise, you have something to say about it?
The one thing that came to mind was, how do you feel this has helped you with, like your everyday, like I know you said when you're talking on the phone or emailing, but is it something that goes hand in hand with meditation to stay present?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. How has it helped me? It's learning how to control my emotions, how to control my mind so that it doesn't run away from me. The baseline experience of having a Qigong practice gives you a concrete, controlled experience. And what happens from experiencing this space with your body over and over and over again is you build this understanding that you can be calm. Like, again, for me, having asthma attacks while I was trying to do my Qigong set at first was a little scary and really triggering. And slowly but surely, I built up the ability to control my asthma attacks, to control my breath. And that's probably the biggest thing, is controlling my breath and being disciplined with my breath. Like, even when my body would get like tense, or I'd had to have someone yelling at me on the phone, and my instinct would be to lock down and to tense up. But learning that I could actually just keep breathing, and I could actually, I learned that I had to force myself, because my mind would just want to like clench and stop and not think. Am I practicing, basically gratitude? Oh, here's another experience. Okay, I have an opportunity here to teach myself how to be stronger. It really helped understanding that I could have control over myself and my body, and not be victimized by my triggers or be triggered by something external. It developed a space of instinct, and it took a little while, but I eventually switched from being anxious or having fear being the first space that arose, to actually having a calm space and being calm as the primary space, where that became the instinct. So my experience is that, it takes time and it takes discipline, and it's a constant refinement, and it's a constant learning experience. But it has really helped me understand how important my breath is, how important connecting with my breath and maintaining that connection really is, and how that really is a huge key to actually staying present no matter what's going on in the outside world.
That's awesome. Yeah, I really want to try it.
Well, I've classes. It's very simple. I go through the basics. The stuff that I teach is very easy to follow along with, and it's also, the thing about Qigong is that the body awareness that you develop is very, very deep, and the opening and closing of the body, either working through, moving where you're reaching up and you're doing slight stretches, but you're engaging the tendons and the fascia, so everything inside the body is being loosened up and conditioned, or whether or not you're letting your body relax in a static body posture where you're holding your arms out to let your mind and your body acclimatize to experiencing stress that way in a safe space, so that when you go into the outside world and you have things happen, you're like, oh, wait, oh no, I'm okay here. Because I've experienced the impact from just being in my body, connected to my body, while I'm using just gravity to stress my nervous system out. And that's sort of one of the things, is Qigong uses your body's own wisdom to develop that connection.
I think it's like what Kim Ing starts off her Chi Flow DVD with is she says it's the chi. So Eckhart may say inner body,
Mhm.
but the unmanifested is not the inner body. A lot of people seem to think that the inner body is actually now I'm connected to the unmanifested. It's the path to the unmanifested. So the more we inhabit the inner body and can feel like, when the chi is flowing,
Yep.
is when we can actually, then we can get the connection is deeper.
Yes.
So most human beings, and I know of myself 10 years back, I would have been out of my body, always in my mind.
Mhm.
And that low mechanical energy, it takes away from this, like consciousness is not completely flowing in through the body. It's
Right.
just going mental thought after thought,
Yep.
right?
Yep. Yep.
So
I completely agree. You're absolutely right. Yep. My own experience is like becoming aware of the inner body is like the threshold of the doorway. And even just understanding that there's a doorknob there that you can open, that there's this door that you can step through is usually very big for people, where they go, oh wow, it's like this feels so different and I feel so amazing. It's like, yeah, because you're grounding, you're connecting, and you're realizing that there's this other space. Now you have to step into it. Yep.
and that inherently is joyful, like to experience the energy field, like as the energy is flowing, it's so joyful. Like when you must be in presence, the joy that you feel, Louise,
Yeah.
it's similar. Like even in qigong, is when people do meditation, that's another path
Mhm.
to it. Do we have any questions, Eileen? Anybody?
There's no questions yet, but I was going to ask myself.
Go
You
ahead.
said that you started this at 12, Kelly?
Yeah, I would actually, I mean, my mom and dad say I started teaching myself meditation when I was a kid, because I would go off and I would sit. I mean, I grew up out in the country, so I go and sit by a tree like all the time. That was like my favorite thing to do as a kid, or down by the river where we lived. But yeah, Qigong formally when I was 12. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just curious because I have an 11-year-old and an 8-year-old, and we've done guided meditation for them, but I feel like they would benefit from this. Thank you.
Yeah.
I think it.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Kelly. Go ahead, and then I'll
my,
say something.
My experience, I mean, for me, it was a profoundly empowering, because I didn't have to concentrate. I just had to remember the movements, and my mind could think, could focus, but it wasn't really hard focus. So it was really easy for me, and my experience as a 12-year-old, to get into Qigong, because I could do it in like 10 minutes or 15 minutes and it'd be over. And then I could sort of like push through that, and my mind wouldn't get too bored as a teenager.
Thank you. What I was going to say, Eileen, I think that people who are very active, right, physically wanting to do things, they may not, if you ask them to sit in a chair, what Eckhart says about Blaise Pascal, the French philosopher, saying, mind, like, I don't know the exact quote, but it's something like that he can boil down all the problems of a human being to one thing: man's inability to sit in a room quietly on a chair by himself, right? And man is man, woman. It's not just man, right? So what qigong does is somebody who is physical, they can at least do a physical activity and bring presence, just like yoga is a physical activity. If you cannot sit in the chair comfortably, because this body is going to say, the ego is going to say, I'm not at comfort, I want to
Yep.
get up.
Yep.
This is useless, right?
Yep, exactly.
We call it hot boredom.
Hot boredom.
He has
Yep.
a very intense, very hot boredom that comes on during meditation. It's getting better, but yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Louise, you have any wisdom on, one of the questions that I had, since we don't have any question and answers, remember I had asked about if you were like the Zen master Hakuin, if your daughter were to come back and say, I'm all healed and now I want my children back, just like Hakuin gave away the baby back and said, is that so?
Right.
You remember that? Is that so?
Yeah,
Kelly?
I use that all the time because that was a very powerful story. And yeah, I do remember you saying that. And the logic, the logic part of me wants to say, well, we adopted them and legally, go through this whole thing. But I feel that I would want them, if she came to me, I think that that's something that I would want, because it is difficult being in your 50s, raising 3 little kids. And a lot of times I feel that maybe they don't get what they could get from, someone who was younger. So, and also the mother-child connection, like I was telling you that my mom's coming tomorrow, and, that's a very special connection, and so I can't really even imagine all these years without her, so I know it's an important bond. And so those are the things that I thought about after we spoke.
Thank you for that. Thank you for, I feel that story, and that's what maybe I may not have highlighted. In that story, what Eckhart is saying is live with the world of form with a certain amount of detachment, right? Even if you have a baby, if it's your own child, live with your child with a certain amount of detachment, because something is going to happen, impermanence of form, and you may have to give up your child. So are you okay? Can you be in presence once you give away your child? And so what I've seen on the Facebook group recently is, and that's why I brought this question, is somebody saying something about having a toxic relationship with their mother, right? And what I wanted to bring up is the mother-father relationship is very sacred, because guess who you are? The seed that you are because of the mother and father, right? So that relationship, you may say through words, the ego may say, because the ego loves enemies, the ego may say, I don't want my mother anymore, right? She's toxic or whatever, but it can never be broken. The mother, and somebody on the Facebook group brought this up. In India, there's a tradition of saying, my mother is like God, my father is like God, and then my teacher is like God, right? And that is honoring that sacred tradition, that your mother and father are the most sacred connection. You can never say, I hate my mother. You have to work on yourself to get to the point that you're no longer hating your mother. The problem is with us, right? Why we are hating our mother. And then we'll come back to blame too, because we'll answer the question. And then I'll give Kelly and you a chance to answer the question. The question, Louise, is, Damien David says, I have a question. Do you ever get overwhelmed by waves of sensation that rise up to the head when practicing this? Louise, you go first, and then Kelly can speak to it.
No, I don't. I find that it's just more like a blissful, joyful feeling. Unless I'm very focused, on the inner body, then I feel the sensations, but I don't really feel that.
So when he says practicing this, does he mean Qigong, Kelly? Yes. Okay.
Yes.
So Kelly, you're more in power to answer this than any of us. So please go ahead. Thank you.
Okay. My experience, and I've studied various Qigong systems, Shaolin, Buddhist, Taoist. One of the things that can happen if there's a lot of tension in the body and you suddenly are releasing through and washing the blood through the body. Like, this is one of the things that Qigong does, especially the moving kind, is that you are moving the blood and the fluid in the body. And if there's a tension anywhere in the body, that release can hit that knot of tension or that level of tension and cause heat to happen in the nervous system, which then hits the head. And that's been my experience. There are a couple of times where I almost looked like I had sunburn. There was so much pressure in my head. That was years ago. Learning how to be softer and gentler with my practice helped. And understanding also where to put my mind and not to let my mind get hijacked during my process, which was also a learning experience. So tension in the mind and body together can create heat and a rush to the head that can feel overwhelming. Sometimes this is also your nervous system adapting to a new space. So it's important to have a practice so that you have, again, that solid baseline so that you know where your body is, you know what's going on in your body, you know what your body feels like when it's relaxed. So then if something like heat or a rush or you feel overwhelmed, you can step back into observation and you can understand what really is going on and why your body is feeling the way that it is.
Thank you, Kelly. That's perfect.
Mhm.
I think it's also, I was watching, so one person that I follow as part of functional medicine is medical medium Anthony William, right? I follow Dr. Mark Hyman. Then out of his posts, I got hold of medical medium. And he was talking recently about adrenaline getting stuck in our body. So it almost akin to the pain body, right? He
Yep.
says what he was saying in the video, and then Kelly and Louise, y'all can answer to this. What he was saying in the video, and I posted that video on our Facebook channel as well, is when somebody hurts us, when we are angry, right? Or somebody says harsh things to us or violent things to us, then it almost is like we are in the wild and our body is getting prepared for an attack. So adrenaline is getting boiling up, right? It's coming up into our body, but our body does, to dissolve anger, our body does not need, it's not like we are being attacked and we have to defend ourselves against a lion, right? But the body has generated that much adrenaline to fight a lion. So now that adrenaline does not get dissipated out into the atmosphere because it's too much, and the body stores it, and that is what is toxic, and that is what where emotional hurt is stuck. And it exactly the picture I got once he explained that, like he gave the scientific reason for it. Eckhart just calls it the pain body. So um Kelly, you go first. How will Qigong help? And then I'll give it to Louise to explain how does she feel the dissipation of adrenaline will help. Thank you.
Okay. Well, Qigong is very cool in the way that it benefits the body for this specific type of stuck energy, if you will. Adrenaline being stuck in the body, it can be washed out by opening and closing the joints, by lifting and engaging the joints and moving blood up and down. And the stuff that I teach is very specific to not just blood flow, but also lymphatic fluid flow in the body. And opening and closing of the joints will pull fluid in and out, up and down in the body. So any adrenaline response, any conditioned instinctive fight or flight or freeze response over time gets regulated into a space of inner calmness, where you develop a different response, which is actually one of observation, where you can then observe your mind go through those sequences, and you can even feel the adrenaline hit you, and not let your body react with adrenaline. And off the top of my head, one major experience was getting stung by a wasp a few years ago. Feeling, literally like right on my solar plexus, right on my stomach. I was in the middle of talking to someone, and it was the weirdest experience because I registered the sting. It hurt, but I breathed right through it, and I did not let my system get overwhelmed by the pain or the trigger. And I just observed this warm flush through my body that then dissipated outward. And I'm in the middle of this conversation with this person, and I almost giggled because the physical response was so strange and weird and unique, because I never experienced that at that point. But yeah, like getting stung by a wasp of all things, like right on that sensitive spot, right on the stomach. Qigong helps regulate the body. Qigong helps build conscious capacity to keep the body regulated and calm and still inside body and mind, so that any external event, such as getting stung by a wasp, will not have the normal fight or flight instinct and will not charge the body full of adrenaline.
Thank you, Kelly. So anybody having a heavy pain body and wanting to know how can I process emotions and how can I process my pain body, Qigong would be a good method to try. If you haven't tried yoga, try Qigong. And Kelly has classes and YouTube videos on it. Louise, you want to say something about the pain body and how you experience the pain body and the emotional?
It's basically just going inside, and one of my things that I practice a lot, like, if I get triggered in some way, like I feel like maybe anxiety is coming up, is I just stop what I'm doing and I focus, like if it's like anxiety in the tummy or in the heart or wherever, and I just go within and I just feel it. I just like let myself feel it until it just transforms itself and goes away. And so that's been a big, huge practice. When I start to feel something, I just stop, go in, feel it until it just goes away. And each time since I've been practicing this over the years, every time it gets, the time gets smaller and smaller. Like sometimes, when I first started it, I'd have to, get on to other things. The phone was ringing, the kids were needing me. So I didn't have that time to sit until it was ready to go. So I'd have to continue, but the more and more you practice it, the more and more you're able to feel like, I'm okay. This is, everything's fine in this moment, but it's going inward again.
And before, do you think you were reactive about things?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it has helped the presence
yeah.
practice and meditation.
Yeah, I was, and then because of this experience of mine, like I was all in the head. That was basically it. It was anxiety, depression, anger, fear, every emotion you could think of. And so this being present and going in has completely changed my whole life, like, completely. And the emotions, they will come, I'll get triggered at times and they'll come. And like I said, I'll go through that. But I see a huge difference in not reacting or, like, I think even part of like, my culture is like, like, don't let anybody tell you what to do. You just tell them right back. And, so that was like in me too. Like, somebody says something like, I'm just ready, so it's really like, it's just changed everything completely. And it kind of goes like, I use that story, like what we were saying earlier about, is a lot of times I'll say that to myself, even if I start to create a story in my head, and I'll go, oh, is that so? Because it really isn't, or I'll use it a lot too when people are saying that they have to feel like a need to prove they're right. And there's really no need for that, And so sometimes they'll say, well, what would you say? And I'll use that parable and I'll say, is that so? And they're like, oh, I never thought about saying that, But so I use that a lot for that type of thing. But yeah, my life has changed completely because of this practice.
Thank you, Louise.
Christina's question is still up there too. Just
Oh.
want to make sure that that was seen because it's kind of included with the other.
Christina says, I can feel the energy. Are you talking about Qigong? As you're talking about Qigong, I think. So what benefits does it bring to be in presence, the Qigong practice? So Kelly, over to you since it's about Qigong.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you, Christina.
The breath. Qigong is all about the breath, learning the breath, feeling the breath in the body, feeling how the breath moves in the body, feeling how your mind, the tension in the mind, your racing mind, your monkey mind will cut off your breath, cause tension in the body, and keep you from being present, regardless of which system. And I've been a yoga enthusiast since I was 4, actually. My mom used to use it to get my brother and I to fall asleep at the end of the day. Whether or not it's yoga or Qigong or even just going for walks, just understanding the power of the breath to redirect and to pull your awareness back inside is incredibly profound. And I mean, my path has been Qigong. In Qigong, what you develop is understanding how the breath moves as you're opening and closing the body, moving the body, doing certain movements, and understanding how to have a relaxed connection with the breath and to keep that space while you're going through your movements, while you're going through a form, or even just holding a posture and watching what your monkey mind does to your breath and how that keeps you from going inside and being calm and being still inside. And it's a very, it's very simple math. That's how I like to put it, because it's all about the breath. It does not matter what art, what discipline, what practice you have. It's all about listening and feeling the breath and feeling how your connection to going inside is strong or is not, and what kind of barriers you're putting up, what kind of barriers your monkey mind and your program is putting up in place.
Thank you, Kelly. And I think what it is it is to be done in combination. It's not enough that you do Qigong, do your meditation and then do Qigong, and then you'll see like a double whammy.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
like a punch.
Yes, that 1-2 punch. Yeah, that 1-2 punch. Yep, exactly. Yep.
Right. Thank you, Eileen, for reminding us. Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was going to mention that I've done yoga I did it for like 20 years, and I didn't get that same inner connection, stillness, presence. In the moment, when I would do it for the hour, I was in there and but then the minute the class was over, I was just back to my old self. And so that's what I was wondering. It's like, it's not enough to do one. Or I was going to ask that because of my experience.
Mm-hmm.
It was almost like when you go to the gym, like even doing like aerobics, like you go to the gym, do your thing and leave, and then you're back to your normal life. I guess I just didn't connect it at that time.
I think what it is our lifestyle has to change, Louise.
Yeah.
I mean, once we take the spiritual path, right, it is almost, excuse me, it's almost rigorous, right? It's like, okay, no longer can we watch TV for 2, 3 hours, right? Because it's bombardment of, you can no longer watch news because it's going to be bombardment of negativity. So you're absorbing the pain. And what news is it's taking the pain body, collective pain body, and like putting it in one like cannonball of news and just shooting it at us, right? And it's targeted towards us, and now it's available on the internet as well. So conscious effort to cut ourselves off from the news, conscious effort to cut ourselves off from whatever is what Eckhart calls in School of Awakening. Louise attended School of Awakening, is the hive mind. It pulls, like the collective hive mind will pull us. So conscious cutting off, and then our mechanical, this mechanical thought forms, right? The speed at which they go will slow down. Then you do qigong two times a week. You do meditation every day, and you can just feel like when you're doing dishes, there's going to be like buzz of energy
Yeah.
flowing
Yes. Yes.
while you're doing dishes. Like the joy of being will be like you're making the bed and you're I fold clothes and just like putting the hands against the cotton fabric. It's like, oh my God, this is joyful. I used to be so irritated about folding clothes
Me
20
too.
years back or
Yeah.
15 years back, right?
Great way of putting it. Great way of putting it. Yeah. The profound joy in such simple things.
Yes.
Such simple things. Yeah. Absolutely. And if I may speak to what Louise said, yeah, I was, I mean, yeah, my mom got my brother and I into yoga when I was a kid, and I didn't know what I was doing until I was in high school, and I'm like, you know, getting ready for track, and someone said, "Hey, you're doing yoga." I'm going, "What? Where? What? Who?" You know, and I go home and I ask my mom, and she's like, "Oh yeah, blah blah blah. That's your like morning and night stretches." I'm going, "Oh, wow, okay." For me, my personal experience, the reason why qigong just pulled me in, just resonated so much with me, just really clicked with me, was the profound immediate effect that it had on my nervous system, the calmness that I'd feel in my nervous system. And it was very different than yoga. And this is why I said, you know, I've been a yoga enthusiast too, but qigong for me was very, very different. And through my research and talking to other teachers, and what I've learned and experienced is that it has a direct effect on the nervous system because of how you're opening and closing the joints and how you're moving your blood and your lymphatic fluid and how you're engaging the tendons in the body when you're moving through the movements and you're coming back and you're opening and closing the body. It rewires your nervous system. And it felt so different than yoga that I was just like, wow, what the heck, you know? So like, especially when I'm like 12 and 13, I'm going, seriously? Okay, like, let's go. So that's my personal understanding of why there's that difference. Like, well, and that's my experience, but everything that I've learned, everything I've been told, and what I've experienced with teachers and read in books, and all the research that I've done points to how qigong engages the tendons and fascia, which then creates more space and massages the nervous system directly. So it's a whole other can of worms, if you will.
Yeah. Very
No,
interesting.
Mm.
I also feel, thank you, Kelly.
Mhm.
I also feel that if we have some kind of health issues, it's easier to do Qigong because it's partially standing, right? It's
Yes.
not high impact, like you're jumping aerobic kind of activity. So it's very slow movement, like Tai Chi.
Yep.
It's a slow movement. So we're not going to injure our hands.
Yeah.
People who are prone to injuries.
Yeah.
So older generation,
You can do it sitting down. Yep. You're absolutely right. Yep.
the modifications to it, you can sit down and do it,
Yeah.
stand up
Yep.
and do it.
Yep. Yeah, it's very versatile. You're absolutely correct. Thank you for bringing that up. Yeah.
Thank you. The other part that we left off at, Louise, was blame.
Yes.
You'll want to talk about blame as it strengthens the ego. One of the things that, because we talk about limiting beliefs, right? That they become the bars, that they become the shutters. And Eckhart has this meme or saying, right, when the shutters are closed, then the light cannot shine through. And to have an understanding that the limiting belief can be that the problem is not in me, the problem is in the rest of the external world.
Yep.
The problem is with my mother, the problem is with my father. So I'm going to sit and drink alcohol, bottle after bottle of alcohol, because I'm going to blame my mother, right? Or I'm going to blame my father, or I'm going to blame my sister, and I'm going to sit and drink or do drugs or whatever. So I would love to see human beings have that separation, right? Here's my thought, and it is just a thought that's saying my mother is responsible or my father is responsible, not realizing that we were born with that lack and incompleteness. Our soul, our non-physical energy already had that compulsion. If we were not compulsive about this drug, we would have been compulsive about food, or we would have been compulsive about going to the gym, or we would have been compulsive about being workaholic, right? So presence is the key to bring that, what Eckhart calls balance of doing and being,
Yep. Yep.
right?
Mhm.
So that we have that balance. So I so do wish that human beings come to that point where they're not blaming. Do you all want to talk about blame? Louise, you go first, and then I'll ask Kelly. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that blame is like so, I mean, I feel like so many people struggle from that. And I even see it even as young in my young children here. You know, I don't, I guess it's just where it comes from. It's just like it's always somebody else's fault. And that's something too that I really wish that we could see more of people, taking responsibility for what is truly their responsibility and letting other people take responsibility for what theirs is. But I feel like that's a very, seems to be a very hard concept for a lot of people. It's almost like a natural response to blame the situation, to blame, a person, to just blame instead of taking on your responsibility, or even just not maybe so much your responsibility as far as blame, but just you're truly responsible for your own life. What is going to make you happy, what's going to make you joyful. A lot of times we're just too scatterbrained, I think, a lot of times. But I see that so often, and like every day, where somebody will blame a situation or a person. And I really
That it's
don't
something
know.
external. The ego wants to make something external. Oh, my car broke down because the mechanic didn't do a good job. Somebody external is always not saying that, oh, I didn't take my car on a regular basis to the service center to get it serviced, so it broke down, right?
Right.
Or didn't notice the sound that it was making, right?
Or even just, yeah, or just taking responsibility for, doing your own spiritual work. It's always like, well, like when I've for instance, if somebody out tells me they have an issue or a problem, and I'll say, you should try meditating, it'll bring, help you to have some space, and it'll bring creativity. The answer will come to you when, you are giving your brain or your mind a break, and they're like, that's just takes so much time, or I can't sit that long, or that's just so hard. Instead of taking that responsibility for changing themselves, then it's easier to go, but if, you know, I went to lost my job, or if my spouse went to cheated on me, or if whatever. So it's like almost like an automatic response for people to blame something. But when you suggest something that they could actually, you know, do, it's like, I don't really want to do that.
And those are the shutters that that person is closing down. They're bringing down the shutter. They're blocking consciousness, that whole chi from flowing through, right? By saying that. Kelly, you want to talk about blame, and we have a few questions. So first, let's talk about blame. What do you have to say? Thank you,
Uh,
Luis.
Blame is always an amazing educational opportunity from my experience. I grew up as a kid with a lot of anger and a lot of anxiety and a lot of fear, which is also the other reason why Qigong really drew me in, because of the dramatic shift in my emotional state, my mental state right away practicing Qigong. My understanding from my personal experience is that blame is part of the duality program, where we have all this anger inside of us and we get afraid of expressing it and feeling safe expressing it, or even just feeling safe feeling it. So we will distract ourselves and blame something outside in the outside world to create drama, to distract ourselves from feeling what's going on inside. And my personal experience has been that when I started stepping back away and stopping myself from judging and blaming others, and letting myself, forcing myself really to feel what I was actually feeling, and not stepping into judgment and not stepping into blame, it really changed everything into an understanding of observation and how I had been distracting myself from letting myself feel, and how much tension that created in my mind and in my body, just constantly being hijacked by my monkey mind into the blame loop, blaming that person, this person, oh, my life isn't this way because of that, or this or that and the other thing. And then later on in life, having to go through things where I've been married and divorced, but having to, in that experience, having the opportunity to step back into observation and to feel the pull to go into blame instead of just understanding, instead of just accepting. And the more I practiced stepping into observation and accepting what was going on, accepting that this person and I were not meant to be, like everything just fell away and there was no resistance. And, it changed everything for me. As challenging as it was emotionally to go through that whole process of the divorce and everything like that years ago, it was this huge gift, really, that showed me how strong I actually was and how different it was stepping into observation and being strong that way instead of going into blame and blaming the outside world. It's like, oh, my life isn't this way because of this person. And going, well, but I was there too. I can't not avoid my responsibility. There's no way to avoid that responsibility. And I feel that blame is a program to distract us from exactly that, from being responsible. And it's the easiest thing to do. It's the easiest thing to do, which is why it's there all the time. And my feeling, my experience is like when you step into stopping that pattern, it changes everything. And again, as I said, it's like for me, like everything just falls away if I ever catch that pattern happening.
Thank you, Kelly. I think it's like the collective pattern, universal pattern throughout the planet of human beings to be able to hold guilt, shame, and blame.
Yep.
Just like jealousy is a collective pattern, right?
Yes.
It's not like, oh, only in South America people feel jealousy. It's like all throughout the planet, jealousy is a pattern. Creating the enemies is a pattern. So I'm going to come to the next question, and then we'll come back to this topic again if we have time. How are we doing? Yeah. How do you find your purpose in life? Kelly asks. Luis,
No, go ahead.
I'll let Luis answer and then hand it over to you, Kelly. Okay. So Kelly is asking as well, how do you find your purpose in life, Luis? Go ahead. I know you found a purpose, so you are the perfect director of this question. Go ahead.
I think it's kind of like what Eckhart says about who am I? You know, it's the same thing. It's like you find your purpose, you find peace, you find so many things when you go within and you give yourself that mental detox. And you give that, once there's that space, then it just comes. I know it sounds like, you know, magical or, you know, kind of like, how can that be? But I find that so much creativity flows through me. So many things come to me that, you know, like I might not be able to afford normally, or the right teachers come to me when I'm ready, and things just come the more I practice stillness and being present and giving my brain and my thoughts a break. And it's almost just like a natural process. You know, you do that and then you get this. And so, you know, I never ever thought that I would write a book. Like I didn't have a clue that that was going to be something I would do. And it just, the more practice that I did, inner work and, you know, being present and really being committed to that, because it is a practice. You have, you know, I feel that if I go a day or two, I am easily taken away. So it's a commitment to do it every day. Then your purpose, your joy, your peace, everything just flows.
Thank you, Luis. Kelly, you want to say something about purpose? How do you find your purpose?
Well, I'd answer that with a question, and that is, what kind of life does the person want? Do you want a life where you are in your head and you're stuck in your programming, or do you want a life where you're in your heart? And how I find my purpose is by going inside. Louise said it very beautifully. Going inside shows us who we are, and understanding who we are from the inside out, from our heart space, is far deeper clarity and far deeper personal connection with ourselves and, you know, the formless, the universe, the divine, whatever you want to call it. Going inside connects you to yourself, and anything that falls away because you've gone inside, anything that's left is who you are, and that's your purpose, is to understand that connection and to express that connection, whether that's in, you know, a job as a firefighter, or a job as an author, or a job as a yoga teacher, or, you know, someone even, you know, running a gym or driving a bus for that matter. To me, it's not necessarily about finding purpose, but it's about finding self and finding an alignment inside.
Thank you, Kelly. And to this, what I would say is, I think Eckhart talks about our purpose in chapter 9 of A New Earth. It starts off towards the end of the book. So if you have A New Earth, I would say read chapter 9. But it does start off with the initial chapters, is to understand the ego, understand where are we putting down these shutters by holding resentment, by holding grievances, by complaining all the time, by holding guilt, by holding shame. Because when the shutters are closed, that means, and I've shown this, like the shutters are closed, like we have some kind of opinions, guilt, shame, resentment, we're creating enemies. So consciousness is coming through from the back, like it wants to create, right? But you have pulled down the shutters. So you have to open the shutters, and that's why a presence practice, this qigong practice, group meditation practice, we offer group meditation that has benefited a lot of people. So when you open and you pull away the grievances, the resentment, the blame, understand your compulsions, what are the generational, like chapter 5 of New Earth goes into the pain body, dissolve your pain body, get into your generational, what as a woman do I have as a conditioning, right? What is my generational conditioning? If you remove all of that, then all you become a window frame. In one of the videos, we learned that Eckhart calls himself as a window frame. So then consciousness is just pouring through. When consciousness is pouring through, every human being has the capacity for creativity. Every human being. And that's what he's teaching in his conscious manifestation course. He already taught that in 2019. Like Louise suddenly discovered she was a writer. All throughout her life, she never realized she's a writer, right? So you're going to realize there's one creative, like either you can do dance, sing, write. There is a creative side to this factory kind of going to doing the 8 to 5 job is not it. Your 8 to 5 job is not creative. The creative side, so nurture your creative side. Do
Yep.
painting, do pottery, find some creative outlet off work, and then you'll realize that, oh, I actually am good at qigong. I'm actually good at writing. I'm actually good at maybe doing some kind of craft. And so there are so many stories that the Spanx, the person who developed the brand Spanx, saw Oprah Winfrey tear off her the leggings. She would Oprah to structure her body, since she had a heavy body, she would actually wear the tights, like the control top tights, right? But she would cut it off at the she would tear it off at the bottom of her skirt. Does that make sense? So she's wearing the
Yes.
tight inside,
Yep.
and that's how the idea of Spanx came in. And it's $1 million, $1 billion. She's the first billionaire woman or something under 30 or whatever it may be. The lady that made Spanx. So ideas of that kind, like right now, how many people are wearing masks? And so mask production has become like the ideas of how to develop masks or
Yep.
face coverings, right? Has become, you can do hand coverings. So there is opportunity, and that's what this pandemic has done, is open another doorway to creativity. So find what is creative about you, and the universe will arise. Like things will happen. Like I'm sure, Louise, when you were writing the book, your publisher came through, the editor came through, how you would market it came through. All but it just unfolds. Like the next person will help you, the next person will help you. You don't even have to look for it. That's how. But the presence is the key. Getting to by chapter 9, you'll get to presence, develop a good presence practice, and that presence is going to intuitively tell you, am I going to talk to this person or not? Right? The intuition will develop. I'm going to move to the next. I'm hoping Kelly's question is answered. The next question is by Sujata. Is there a gentle way to guide someone towards responsibility without distancing them from us? Kelly, you go first, and then Louise is going to speak.
Guiding others to self-responsibility, in my experience, requires an understanding of how to be open and honest with ourselves in terms of what we want, the communication to support, and to do so in a way that supports two-way communication. I mean, sometimes people get very defensive and very aggressive and attacking when they are called out on their patterns. Sometimes gentle is possible if you maintain your presence, if you maintain your ability to be calm and collected. That usually tends to short circuit people's self-defense mechanisms, because they expect a certain type of aggressive reaction, and want to create conflict as a defense mechanism. So my experience has always been to stay calm, stay direct, to listen, and honestly, to see what kind of space there actually is to have a communication, to have a conversation, and to be able to communicate that you are asking because you care and because you love the person, because you want to grow and you want to build that growth with that person.
Thank you, Kelly. Louise, the question is there a gentle way to guide someone towards responsibility without distancing them from us? What's your experience?
I think, well, part of how I feel that things go well when I speak to other people is that, you know, taking the time to not react, but also taking the time to pause before you speak. And also, I find that so one thing that's very helpful and a little more gentle than like being direct. Sometimes, you know, I think it also depends on the receiver too. Like, you know, and you'll sense that when you're talking to someone, whether they're going to be overly sensitive or take it the wrong way, or they're going to be open to what you have to say.
Yep.
But I find that one thing that seems to be on the more gentle side is giving examples. Like, you know, the story of the monk that I think it was Kim, right? That used that example when we did that 6-month course. And so a lot of times, you know, even like just with the kids, for instance, I'll give them a story or an example of something. And then you can you know, if you, maybe that's enough. But sometimes you'll say, then you can kind of loop it around and say, so like in this situation, or this reminds me of that situation. But I do think that a lot of times, you just sense, you know, you have that intuition about what they're ready to receive.
Thank you, Louise. Is there a gentle way to guide someone towards responsibility? What I would say is don't even want it. Don't even have the desire to go change somebody, because they are going to, like, each human being has their own path, and each human being is going to have their spiritual leaning towards whether they're going to listen or not listen. And supporting the group for 4 years, I've understood that I may post something as a response. The person may not take it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So be ready for that. That you may say with the intention of, I'm going to speak to this person about their responsibility, a gentle way. So spaciousness, allow them to be as unconscious as they are. If they're irresponsible, allow them to be as irresponsible. You know, I think in The Power of Now, Eckhart says, if somebody's being lazy, just be as lazy as you want to be. That's what you need to do, is be lazy. That moment, you are going to be lazy. It's okay. It's okay for you to be lazy in that moment. Look at his surrender. Look at his acceptance. So that in your acceptance, in your surrender, in your allowing that person to be as they are, they're going to shift. Something happens because presence power is flowing from you. You're allowing that person to be as they are. It's going to shift without you saying a word, right? And it doesn't matter whether they are going to be responsible or not going to be responsible, because each human being, how many ever members are there on the Facebook group, how many ever members we have in our family, each one is going to make their own spiritual journey. They have to come to the same awakening as we have, right? Eventually, either they do it in this lifetime or they do it when their body leaves and the spirit, the non-physical, is free, and that's when they come to what Abraham Hicks called, it's a croaking experience. She makes it very benign, leaving the body, because it's just, this is one coat we worn, right? We'll become another body. Eileen has to leave. That's fine, Eileen. Thank you so much. Thank you. You're incredible. Thank you for your help.
Yes, thank you,
No
Eileen.
problem.
We do have another question from Rajendra. I'll continue. Eileen can leave.
Yeah,
Eileen,
and
your mother.
there's no more questions after
Perfect.
that one.
There's one last question, so we'll answer that. Before we answer the question, Lakshmi says, beautiful explanation of finding your purpose, Louise. So she's thanking you.
Thank you.
So the very last question is there life after death? Rajendra asks. Kelly, go ahead.
I
Thank you.
personally am a big believer in life after death, or that other life after we take this coat off and put the next coat on. Personal experiences, when I was young and I had the severe asthma episodes and I would end up in the hospital, I often had out-of-body experiences where I would sit with other people and talk about life and things that were going on. And a lot of things that people talk about in terms of, dying and coming back were like, yeah, that's what that room was. Okay, all right. So from a very young age, I've been a very big believer in life after death. And I personally believe it exists. I believe that our soul, our energy of who we are, keeps going. I mean, it's the basic law of energy, is that energy cannot be destroyed. It just continues and it just transforms. And that's my personal belief.
Beautiful. Thank you, Kelly. Louise?
Yeah, I pretty much agree with what he said. I feel that, our bodies leave, but our spirit is there. And I too had, when I was 16, I had a near-death experience. And my mom said that the doctors were like saying, call in pastor, and people were running, trying to bring me back, and she was in there, and I was like on this white horse, and I remember my hair was like sticking up because I was going so fast, and it was like a tunnel, and there was light, and there was just the feeling that there was other spirit and other formless, I don't know how to explain it, but it was, since that time, and I was 16 then, I really have believed that. And then, I've read the Bible twice each time it took a year from front to back. And I've read, a lot of spiritual books. And there's actually an author, I might say her name wrong, the last name, but it's Anita Morjani. And she talks about a near death, or where she actually left for a little bit and came back. And so I do believe that there is another life after our bodies die.
Thank you, Louise. And I think Rajendra, being from East India, he should know of it, because East Indian Hindu philosophy already talks about our past lifetime. And the book, The Nature of Personal Reality, actually talks about us being in 7 lifetimes simultaneously. So we may be in 7 lifetimes simultaneously right now, this moment. So life is life and life and life. What does Eckhart say? Life has no opposite. Birth, the opposite of birth is death. Life is just life, right? Because life is the consciousness flowing, the one consciousness, the stream of consciousness flowing through us. And that's why we actually understand each other, because if we didn't have the same consciousness, none of these words would resonate. Lakshmi wouldn't be telling Louise that she understood what it was, and
Yep.
Christina wouldn't be saying that she understood what Kelly said about Qigong. So,
Mhm.
right? The
Exactly.
background has to be the background, or the motherboard that it's hitting has to be the same for each human being. So
Yep.
there is no race. All that is human made. Race, color, gender, any of the separation that we see is off the mind.
Yep.
In our essence, we are one, the same stream of consciousness.
Yes.
And all the positive and negative exists in that stream of consciousness. We are the jealousy, we are the anger, we are the loving kindness, we are the compassion, we are the empathy, we are the humility and gratitude. But the other also exists. It's just that we have so much awareness now that the other is dissolving, what the
Really.
so-called bad. So incredibly amazing, an honor and a privilege, Kelly and Louise. And thank you so much.
Yes, thank you.
And
And
thank you so much to all the people that attended and provided their wisdom. And the question itself is a wisdom, because without the question, since this is all unscripted, we don't know what the question is. The answer never comes. So the question is as important. The creativity of the question is as important as the answer. So great, absolutely filled with gratitude that everyone showed up. Have a
Yes,
good
thank
night.
you.
everyone.
Good night,
Bye.
everyone.
Good
Thank
night.
you. Bye.
Good night.